All right, so this is sequence 2, number 13. In the first row, a theater has 36 seats, and each successive row has 2 additional seats. The theater has a total of 3,000 seats. How many seats are there in the last row? So let's take this apart and figure out what our variables are. So the first row of a theater has 36 seats. So therefore, we know that A1 is 36. Each successive row has 2 additional seats. So that's giving me my common difference, which is D. So there's 2 seats. And the theater has a total of 3,000 seats. So that's the sum, is 3,000 seats. And how many seats are there in the last row? So what they're asking you for is A of n. But the other thing that you don't know, you also don't know what n is. So those are 2 variables that we don't know. All right, let's write down the 2 equations that we could use. We know that an equals a1 plus d times n minus 1. And we know that the sum is going to be n over 2 times a1 plus an. And the nice thing about these equations is that those are the only 2 equations we can work with. So we're just going to input our variables into those equations and see what we have left. So let's take this first one. An we don't know, so we're going to keep that an. A1 we know is 36, plus our common difference, which we said was 2, and n we don't know, so that's n minus 1. All right, so here I have 2 variables, so that's not going to help me. I can't solve that one as it is. So let's move on to the next equation. The sum is 3,000. And I don't know n, so we'll keep that a variable, n over 2. A1 we know is 36. And again, I don't know an, so I'll leave that as a variable. So now if we step back and take a look at our two equations here, we can see that we have 2 equations and 2 variables. So now we know that we can solve this. So let's go ahead and take this first equation here and let's simplify it. So an equals 36. I'm going to distribute that 2. So I'm going to have 2n minus 2. And so this will simplify down to 34 plus 2n. So I can now take this expression or this equation here, and I can substitute it in here. So I'm going to have 3,000 equals, n is still my variable, n over 2, times 36, which is my a1. But now instead of putting an, I'm going to put 34 plus 2n. Now, the nice thing about doing this, if you take a look at this equation now you have 1 equation and 1 variable. So now you know you can solve this. So I've got 3,000 equals n over 2 times 70 plus 2n. And let's continue to solve this. I'm going to multiply through by 2 to get rid of that fraction. So I'm going to have 6,000 equals n times 70 plus 2n. And you can see that we're going to end up with a quadratic equation. We have 6,000 equals 70n plus 2n squared. And if we get everything on one side of the equation, we're going to have 2n squared plus 70n minus 6,000 equals 0. We need to make sure it's set equal to 0 in order for us to be able to solve this. And I can see that everything's divisible by 2, so let's go ahead and divide by 2 to simplify our equation. And now you have a choice. You can try and factor this if you want, or you can solve it by the quadratic formula. I'm just going to go right to the quadratic formula because that 3,000 is kind of a big number. So I have n equals minus b, so minus 35, plus or minus the square root of 35 squared minus 4 AC, so times negative 3,000 all over 2A. If I go to my calculator and complete underneath the radical, I'm going to find out that it's a perfect square. And when I take the square root of it, I'm going to get 115. So this will be minus 35 plus or minus 115 all over 2. So I'm going to have two answers, which you should expect since it's a quadratic. I have n is going to equal 40, or n is going to equal negative 75. But I can't have a negative 75 rows, so that's going to be an extraneous solution, so we're going to ignore that one, and we know that n is 40. But if we go back and read what the question asked us, the question did not ask us how many rows there are, they asked us how many seats there were in the last row. So they asked us what an is. So we know a1 is 36, plus d, which we said was 2, times n minus 1, so 40 minus 1, which would be 39. And we can go ahead and go to our calculator, and we'll say 39 times 2 plus 36, and we'll get 114. So my last row will have 114 seats in it. I hope that was helpful.